Today on How Do You Hustle, we have Jasmine and Maggie from Culture Club podcast online. How are you guys?
Good. Thank you so much for having us on today. We really appreciate it. Happy to be here.
I'm really happy to have you guys as well. So I might just ask, so I've been following your podcast for ages. I think you guys are doing so well with just everything. I noticed you've had it since 2020. And it seems to be going from strength to strength. So tell me how this kind of all came about.
So last year, oh my gosh, 2022. So 2020.
I do that all the time.
I'm still in 2021. It was lockdown. I had just gone up to my parents' house and accidentally got locked up there in Brisbane. Locked up, I mean, out of the state, because Melbourne went into hard lockdown. And I was feeling like wanting to make a change. And I'd always thought about starting a podcast, but I didn't know if I wanted to do it alone or what I would want to talk about. I just thought it'd be a really fun, creative activity. And I knew that Maggie was interning at Fashion Journal, where I had previously interned, and we'd only met in person like 2 or 3 times. But from what I saw of Maggie's internet presence, we were always kind of thinking about the same topics, sharing our thoughts on the same topics on Instagram, and then we were both pitching the same ideas to Fashion Journal magazine. And thinking of starting a podcast, maybe we could do it together about pop culture and internet trends, and she said yes. And it all happened really quickly after that. So within like 2 weeks, we'd recorded our first episode. There you go.
Wow.
Yeah, we knew it was going to be something. If we didn't start it straight away, it'd be something that we would want to always make perfect before we release into the world. And that would just never happen. So yeah, really quick, name brainstorm. We had like a nice cute deck between us with our like inspiration. And I mocked up our first album like cover thing, which is definitely not as good as the one that my little sister designed for us recently. So yeah, it's been really cool to see that growth.
Yeah, so obviously with lockdown and borders being shut and things like that, how did you kind of make the podcast happen? How did you get it started?
Yeah, so we're actually so used to doing the distance podcast recording now, because apart from one episode, we've recorded every single one of our 70 episodes in other rooms, in like other states sometimes as well. I think thank you, power of the internet, for making it quite seamless. I mean, we all have our technological hiccups now and then, but it's been pretty smooth sailing. Like the programs we use are really good for collaboration, and it's just kind of the way we've rolled, but it's definitely been trial and error. Like it is, awkward. There are some bumps in the road when you're not in the same room with someone trying to have a conversation, of course, but it's felt natural because it's almost all we've known with each other. As Jazz mentioned, we started off essentially as internet friends, so our our relationship has been a lot based online, even though we are great in real life friends now as well.
I feel like that was so common in the the pandemic as well. Like you just kind of found new ways to build those friendships. I started my other job, I work in PR, I started remotely and continue to work remotely. So it's just kind of the way of the world now, isn't it?
Exactly.
So what was your what drew you both to, I guess, culture in particular, and like I suppose celebrity culture, social commentary, like what kind of attracts you to that?
Yeah, I'd say that we are both culture writers first and podcasters second. So a lot of our writing, Maggie is currently a writer at Refinery 29 Australia, and I work for Pedestrian Group as well. And we've both written for other publications as freelancers. So I think this podcast is definitely an extension of our writing careers, and definitely things that we don't get to write about. Maybe someone else has already written about it for that publication, or we just want to like discuss it kind of top level. I think that's what we use the podcast for, and getting a bit deeper beyond the gossip, like kind of questioning, why are these celebrities doing this? Like, what does it mean for the culture? What does it mean for the next 5 years of internet trends or whatever? I think it's also just like an extension of our curious brains. We just love to like question and speculate. And yeah, I think it's just a combination of those things.
Cool. I love that.
Right.
It's almost like those conversations you have with your friends that like you just talk about something like, oh, I wonder if like next year we'll be wearing that trend again, and then it ends up happening.
That's all of our favorite feedback that we actually get from our listeners, you know, when they're like, oh, it just feels like we're listening to like a conversation with friends, or it just feels really calming. And it's like the way I love to start my day, or anything like that. Because while Jazz and I are super, super, you know, interested in culture and pop culture and whatnot, we're not really experts, I would say, but we're people who just have such a love for it, which I think a lot of listeners can relate to as well. So yeah, it's been really fun.
Definitely a few culture junkies out there. So what's your highlight been? I might ask both of you separately. So what's the highlight been over the last over a year that you've been doing it? And well, I guess it's nearly 2 years now that you've been doing it. So yeah, what's been the biggest highlight for you guys? Maybe it was a particular guest or a particular moment in time that you have been covering that was just one of those moments for you?
What comes to mind is quite selfish. So I'm so sorry. Like, I feel like I should point to a particular guest, like you mentioned, or something. But if I'm going to be honest, I mean, okay, two things. One of them's a bit more wholesome, but I'll say the selfish one first because I prefaced it. But I've actually felt, I've actually felt myself just improve so much throughout this process. It started as a fun hobby, which it still is, but I'm really honestly just proud of myself for becoming better at speaking, because I feel like verbal communication has never been my strong suit. So it's really just forced me to be better at talking in front of people and in front of the microphone. So number one. And then number two, I will be wholesome. And honestly, without this, Jazz and I might have just stayed internet acquaintances, but now we are really close friends who hang out, who get to work together. And like, that is such a blessing. And yeah, we get to chat every single week, almost without fail, because of this podcast as well. So yeah, highlight for me.
Oh, that's so sweet. I want to cry.
I love that.
Well, mine aren't that as wholesome as that. I mean, those things are definitely true. As the card. So yeah, aside from what Mag said, I think hearing people's opinions, and like when people are like, oh, I never thought of something that way, or no one else is talking about this, those types of messages we get after an episode are always really rewarding, because it reminds us that we're not just like speaking to each other, like people are actually listening and find what we're talking about interesting. And yeah, I do think we've had some great guests as well. I think some highlights would definitely be Kath Ebbs and her conversation on like mental health and disordered eating. Sienna Catullo's episode on Indigenous fashion, and there's so many more. Those are just two off the top of my head. So getting to have those conversations with people who are making change in their industries and niches is also really rewarding.
Yeah, amazing. I love that. And yeah, what do you enjoy most about like doing the podcast? Like, I don't know, is there like a particular I guess topic that you find the most fun to discuss, or is there a particular like celebrity that comes up regularly, or I might get you. I don't know if you want to answer that one, Mag.
Yeah. Curious to see if you've got any other thoughts as well, Jazz, after. But yeah, I think one thing that we are very like cognizant of is that there are so many pop culture podcasts, and there are so many podcasts doing it really, really well as well. So many that I personally listen to and look up to. So it can be quite daunting sometimes. But I really enjoy some of our chats that really lean into, I would say, Gen Z internet culture. So whether that's, looking at TikTok trends or looking at certain celebrities or random niches on the internet, I feel like that is kind of where we shine as well, because not everyone's talking about it and not everyone has, I guess, the same lived experience of being so online as well. There's also been a couple times where we become quite like vulnerable and open with our audience as well. We have a couple of heart to hearts from like the occasional time. So I find those really rewarding as well, because I think we really do put so much of ourselves on the podcast.
What about you, Jazz? Is there any?
I second that. Yeah, no, I think, Maggie summed up really well. Just yesterday it was a chat about, well, by the time this is out, that episode will be out, but it was a chat about Instagram and where Instagram's going, and it ended up being like a personal convo about how we feel about Instagram and how we're setting new boundaries with it and stuff, and it ended up being a longer chat than usual. But when we have those conversations that kind of run off the main topic, I really enjoy those as well.
Yeah. And so, you both mentioned that you work as well and do the podcast on the side. So how do you find juggling that, and how do you juggle that? What does that look like in your week to week life?
Oh, it's quite a lot, hey. It's changed over the past 2 years, but currently we are recording Sundays, which means we usually also like pop together our show notes that day, and then throughout the week we take on kind of different tasks, like as a duo. But we'll be doing Instagram. We post about twice a day, every single day. So we do that, literally every single day. And Jazz's sister edits and produces our podcast, and Jazz also gives it like her a hand with that. So there's quite a lot of steps to it, and I'm sure you know from having a podcast yourself, but it's not as easy as it looks like from the outside.
No, I've had a few friends who like they have their own brand, or they do something and they're talking about launching it, and I'm just kind of like, oh, okay, you're gonna do that. I'm like, do you like, because I edit, I'm a one-man band, I edit everything, and I work full-time as well. So I would love to do way more. Like I could do so much more, but it's just having those hours in the day or the week. Even finding guests sometimes can take time, so you got to be very organized. But yeah, you guys are obviously nailing it. And so you sort of set it aside on weekends, and then I guess at night, it's your out of hours kind of hobby, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. So we record on a Sunday night, and my sister India Rain edits it on a Monday, and then Monday night, like Mike said, I'll listen over, make sure that she's edited out whatever we want, and then write the show notes. And Maggie makes the carousel for the Instagram, which goes up on a Tuesday. So we kind of pull some tweets about the topics and any articles we've referenced. And then, throughout the week, we just keep an eye on any fun tweets or any cool photo shoots that are happening, and we'll post them. Maggie is the social media brains.
Chronically online, so it helps.
Trying to manage that social media addiction.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Where do you see this going in the next year? Like, what, I'm sure you both sat down and worked out some goals. Like where do you want this podcast to go, I guess?
Yeah, jump in, Jazz, because like I'm curious because I wonder if we'll say the same thing. But I
Okay.
actually think now both of us in the last 6 months have entered the full-time workforce. Our kind of priorities have changed, but kind of out of necessity, just because, like you mentioned, you can't pour your all into a side hustle when you're doing full-time work and you're also caring just for yourself as well. So I feel like we're taking more of a backseat approach to the podcast this year. And that's not to say that we don't love it and that we're still pouring so much energy into it. But, you know, the other week we took our first sick leave break because we just weren't feeling really up to it that week. And that's totally fine. I think it's a year of, you know, continuing to have these conversations that we really love and to keep, you know, building our community, especially online. But it's also like being gentle on ourselves, that it's okay to have breaks and whatnot.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And we currently don't make any money off this. We've had like 3 or 4 sponsored episodes. So like this is all our time and energy, unpaid. So I would say that, yeah, we're just focusing on trying to keep it as like fun as possible, which it definitely is, but obviously it takes work. So like
Yeah.
making sure it doesn't become a burden and you begin to resent it, because I would hate for that to happen. And I don't know how Maggie feels about this, but it's come pretty close to it, I'd say. Like the end of the year, things are just so hectic that like doing the podcast felt like so much work. But we kind of pared it back and just kept it consistent, which I'm really proud of. And now I feel like a renewed sense of love for it and energy for it for this going into 2022. So I think it's important to definitely keep boundaries with your side hustles, especially when you're working full time, because that's like 40 hours a week, and then you have leisure and exercise and looking after yourself. So yeah, it can be a lot, but I'd agree with Maggie. I think just building a community. I'd love to have some great guests on who we haven't had before, and just having fun.
Perfectly summarized. I couldn't agree with that more. And yeah, I actually noticed that last year you guys posted that you were having a bit of a break, and I thought, oh, that's so good. Like these days I feel like that conversation's more common, but I feel like back in the day people just burnt themselves out and didn't, you know, they just did the job and did all the other million things on the side. So I think it's good that we're even having these conversations these days. So yeah, I don't know if you have any advice, but if there was someone out there that's thinking about starting a podcast or going down the path that you guys are on, or even maybe just getting into the cultural commentary space, what advice would you give them? I don't know which one of you would like to answer, but
Maggie.
Yeah, both. I think my advice kind of varies quite a lot for the writing versus the podcast space. So with podcasting, I think especially like I mentioned with pop culture, there are so many podcasts that are quite similar out there. And I think as buzzwordy as it sounds, finding your niche or finding what you enjoy talking about or kind of what just sets you apart. And I guess the answer to that is always you are you and no one else is you, and you have your own thoughts, but to really just kind of like flesh it out a little bit more. For writing though, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this for podcasting, but it is like reading widely and reading from a lot of writers that you really admire and just learning from the best. And that's personally really helped my writing journey as well, especially with culture. Like I love reading from many like local and international publications. Yeah, like keep inspired, and it just really helps.
what are your kind of predictions for 2022? Like, what do you think we're going to see? I know that's such a big question, but what do you think we are going to see on the internet, or what kind of trends are you guys forecasting?
In this last episode we put out, we definitely speak about the future of Instagram and what that looks like for 2022. I don't know about you, but I feel like a lot of people are like not leaving, but definitely taking a step back from the app, going towards TikTok, which is obviously huge. I don't know in terms of fashiony culture trends. I'm gonna have to think about like that. I mean, anything Matilda Jerf, obviously, is huge for like fashion. And I think it is definitely more about not casual Instagram or like casual internet trends, but like it's kind of finding the balance between putting yourself out there online a lot like we used to versus like being so casual that it's fake, which is again what we kind of talk about on the podcast.
I find trend prediction questions so difficult because I'm like, I just leave that to the experts and I'll just watch along, because I think it is so hard to predict nowadays. If you told us a few months ago about the TikTok weird things that are going around just this week, you'd be like, what in the world? Like, they just pulled out of someone's ass, honestly. And who knows what will stick either. So to me, I think I want to just keep more of an open mind and not, I don't know, judge maybe trends so quickly or whatever. Just kind of be more of an observer this year, which is such a non-answer. Can't give you anything specific, but there you go.
No, I think it's interesting what you say about Instagram, and it kind of goes back to what we said about people saying they're taking a break. Like it's been so huge in our lives that I think everyone's kind of like, okay, we're ready for something else for a while. We need an Instagram holiday. But I think as well, I wonder if I'm interested to hear your thoughts on cancel culture, and if you think that the whole, one person doing 1 foot wrong or something pretty bad and then completely, being exiled from the internet community. Do you think that we're still going to see things like that?
Yeah, we have a lot of conversations about this on the podcast as well, just the different like facets of cancel culture. And I think the one like element that I personally am quite tired of, and I think hopefully we will see change because it's just so like fatiguing, is that when people kind of put two things that are very different on the same pedestal. And what I mean by that is like two people could be cancelled for two really different things. One could just say a comment that's poor taste, like they might have made it like a decade ago and it's not technically really hurting anyone, but then someone's done something really terrible, it's a serious allegation, yet they are both still cancelled to a similar extent in the culture. And I feel like that kind of just like one note view of cancel culture is just really damaging.
Agreed.
Yeah,
well,
I would agree with that as well. Sorry, I don't actually have anything to add. I just thought I would say I agree.
You're just saying
hello. Yeah. Just saying hello. Still here.
I think that's most of my questions, but I was just going to say, so if people would like to check your podcast out, or maybe both of you out, where can they go online?
Yeah, so you can follow us at Culture Club Pod on Instagram. Maggie is at YeMags on Instagram, and I'm Jasmine with double E Skye, SKYE on Instagram. And otherwise, you can listen to us on Apple and Spotify. And I think that's it. Yeah, but mostly we're online on Instagram. So come and jump in our DMs.
Well, I'll let you both go back to your days, but it's been so lovely to talk to you both. I've been wanting to talk to you for ages. I've been watching, I've been lurking. Yeah, thanks for coming on, and honestly, all the best for this year. Here's to hopefully a better 2022. And all the best with the podcast.
Cool. Yeah, thanks so much for having us. It was really fun way to start the week, and good luck as well. Happy 2022.